In this episode of Everything Hurts, we chat about how we come up with new ideas, why everyone seems to be trying to monetize their hobbies, and why it's so hard for most labs to have a singular focus of research. And before we begin, I'd also like to mention that we had some problems with James's mic, so the quality of his audio wasn't up to our usual standard. To make up for this, we've added one of our older bonus episodes at the end of this conventional episode. These bonus episodes are typically only made available for our Professor Fancy Pants Patreon patrons, but now you'll get to hear one. Welcome to Everything Hurts. My name is Dan Quintana from the University of Oslo. I'm here with James Heathers from Cypher Skin. James, do you remember your proposal back when we were PhD students that if you were able to take down a senior researcher with money, you should be able to take their research funding?
Yeah, man, the Hunger Games. The research Hunger Games.
The Hunger Games. Well, we've had a similar proposal from friend of the show, Noah Haber, who's
the wrathful stats goblin.
The stats goblin. He has proposed the somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but somewhat half-seriously, the Highlander program, in that if you take down a study or if you point out a study's flaws, you will absorb all of its citations.
Wow.
Yeah. So this was more in the spirit of right now there isn't that many... There should be a bounty program, yeah? Because right now there isn't that many incentives to actually go through and check the veracity of published work. And obviously work that gets cited more is work that's getting more attention. So there should be some sort of way that we could reward this sort of stuff. We have spoken about this idea of a red team where a researcher puts their hand up to say, I want people to come and take a close look at my research, but that takes the actual researcher to say that. So I wanted to quickly talk about some possibilities for bounty programs. And one thing I thought about is when it comes to journals actually doing this, because journals want to be known as reputable outlets. I know, for instance, any... You don't think so? Society journals.
Go on.
Okay.
Finish your little idea.
Okay, so let's just say, for instance, any work right now that's coming out of the Monetise journal, compared to other journals, I would bet the house that work there is much more likely to be more robust because everything's transparent, because they have someone actually checking the code, and stringent peer review, etc. So if a journal came out to say, hey, we're actually setting up a bounty program for our work in our journal, you will get, you will get, they set sort of typos get like, $1 or whatever. But more serious issues, basically, if you find a retractable error, you would get $1,000. Yeah. Springer Nature, $13,100 per paper. They have a little bit of spare cash that they can splash around. Bounty program, and they say that anyone that finds an error in the paper can get this reward. Not only does it motivate people to actually check stuff, it also motivates researchers to be a little bit more careful with their work. Thoughts, James, on a bounty program per journal?
Your sticking point is the difference between this is bad and this is an insufficient observation. So it has to be some kind of screw up, yeah? And it has to be to the point where whatever you're dealing with, it becomes insoluble. Like you use the wrong formula. For a conversation I had yesterday, you use a model where no matter what data you feed it, it's always going to find exactly the same result. So you turn everything inside out. So it's some kind of process-driven inefficiency, right? Well, not inefficiency, some process-driven fuck up. that determination's hard enough now. You add a bunch of money for the actual journal. I think what you're proposing is just gonna get us less things getting retracted.
Why?
Because it's gonna cost them money, Dan. Because you just put a financial incentive in there. And you're like, journals care about accuracy. When you say journals, do you mean the journal is a publication entity that's owned by a company who thinks it's an asset, or do you mean the journal, the community of people organized around the editorial staff who are trying to publish, represent, and advance an academic area?
The community.
Okay, so they care about it, and what you're saying is that they're going to go to the people who provide them with the infrastructure to run their journal and go, hey, we're going to start throwing out pieces of your journal, and now you have to pay these angry people on the internet.
Oh, of course they're not going to be happy about it.
Well, they're not going to be happy about it. You don't have any leverage. Look, I hate getting into the practicalities of an idea before we talk about whether or not it's good or bad. All you're going to do is, it's going to exacerbate something that happens now, which is basically like, dear critic, I have looked at all of the points you have made about this paper, which is built of spiders, and all of the numbers were not in Hindu-Arabic numerals, but some kind of space Sumerian, which means that the authors can't add up. And they did, for instance, claim that all rabbits are brown and are also from Jupiter. However, we do not feel that the errors contained herein warrant a retraction. We have instead corrected it to say all rabbits are white, and put some of the numbers into hieroglyphs. We trust this has ameliorated your concerns. You're putting money on the outcome. Yeah? The reason why red teaming is a better idea than that is red teaming is putting money on the process.
During while you're doing it. Yeah, okay.
Now, to give you your due, it's fucking funny.
Look, just like Noah's original Highlander tweet. G'day, Noah, if you are listening. Look,
no, he's got real things to do with his time. Like complain on a platform on the internet about incorrect statistics to an audience of dozens.
Dozens of people. Look, we're not going to be talking about the Highlander approach. Or the movie.
I have never seen the movie.
I just know it from cultural references. That's it.
I know there's a man
it's a sword, kilts and swords and death.
Well, that hardly narrows it down. That sounds like Braveheart.
Yeah. Look, I want to talk about this idea of how do you get ideas for new stuff. We talk a lot about how do we test ideas, but not necessarily how we actually generate those ideas in the first place. And it's a question that I get occasionally asked as well, is that how do you get these ideas for new experiments, for new papers, for new initiatives? So James, I can't believe I haven't actually asked you this before. I don't think I have. How do you actually get ideas for new stuff that you're working on?
For me particularly?
Yeah.
Well, obviously it's a little bit different now, where everything in a company is process driven. Like a lot of stuff is fit to task. Me having bright ideas a lot of the time is a collective distraction to everyone here, because to do anything about them, it doesn't generate valuable intellectual property. A lot of the time it's just words on a page. And I'm in a continual battle, as is everyone past a sort of certain level of decision-making capacity at any organization, in a continual battle to keep my focus on the things that do need to be done. So, in the slightly more historical sense, I really wish I had some kind of mechanistic thing to tell you. I mean, I have strong opinions on where other people do this, but they appear to me a lot of the time reasonably unbidden. And in general, it is, I would say, that if they do have a characterization, it is, unless it's something that's overarching, it's not immediately available for testing, but it's something within the sort of incremental scientific tradition. I would say that the ideas have three elements. we're going to use A to do B to see its effect on C. Now, in general, I would say one of those things you understand really well, and it's generally C or A. But a lot of the time for me, that would be a new method, a new way of processing something with its own implications, like an observation that's never been made before, and seeing how it fit into a different kind of strata of idea on the right-hand side.
So
that's the only characterization I think I can give it, really. And of course, I mean, the general frustration is a lot of the time, unless you become an academic fancy man, in my case, you don't have a lot of freedom outside of your PhD to be able to do that shit.
So you're saying that you would read, for example, a method applied in a different space than you're working in, and then you would think about how to apply that method into what you're doing.
Yes, often it was method driven. At least it was for me. It was generally method driven. It was generally the juxtaposition between changing the method and the pathway to which it became meaningful, and how it interacted with a certain class of idea. That feels like a very prosaic thing to say, Dan. Look, how were you expecting to answer this question from your little nest of wizards?
I take a similar sort of approach, and one thing that's really surprised me is I've hated going to presentations which aren't directly relevant to what I'm studying, because I'm thinking I could spend this time writing or doing some other stuff. But there's been...
I mean, why would you pay attention to your education? I mean, why would you have external interests? Why not subserve the entirety of your available thought for either the gastrointestinal habits of your children, presumably, considering the ages that they are, or merely your job as an obedient worker within the knowledge infrastructure to continually produce more questionable stuff on the same topics?
I know, right?
Why would you want to know other things?
Why on earth? But I found so many of the ideas that I've gotten for some of my recent research has been from, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to listen to this presentation. I can't see the direct relevance, but there might be some gold. And in a lot of circumstances, it has been where someone talks about a method and I'm like, I think I could apply that to my work. And it's opened up a lot of doors. So now I almost force myself to go to these presentations, which are peripheral and have some sort of tenuous link to what I'm doing, but no direct link. Even when I tell myself this is probably going to be a waste of time, more times than not, it actually isn't. And I've picked up some really cool stuff.
Right. So you're saying that's how you used to think, and then you've suddenly discovered that being exposed to new ideas is in fact valuable.
Yeah.
Which is probably a good observation to get around in your mid-30s.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden my stimulus material for doing stuff like that is, I can't even sum up the constellation of lunatic bullshit I pump into my head in any given week.
What sort of stuff? I'm curious.
On YouTube, I watch a lot of stuff on mechanical and machine repair, blacksmithing, tool breakdowns, explanations. I'm particularly fond of HVAC systems. I'll listen to a good few podcasts on ventilation management. This is pre-COVID, by the way. It's just that someone explained to me once how complicated HVAC was, so I started to get interested in it. Besides that, some philosophy of the consciousness theory of minds, kind of stuff. A lot of tool things now, a lot of fabrication stuff. How was this made? How was it stuck together? Some like digital history, going back to about 1980, and the sort of weird curlicues. As much weird internet as I can fit in. Like, all of that, I'm continually consuming all of that all the time, mixed in with whatever the fuck turns up on any given day.
How do you fight against this thing that a lot of people experience, in that people feel like they have to monetize their hobby or monetize their interest? Oh, I'm doing this thing.
Don't.
Yeah.
Don't feel that way. How do I fight against it? Look, telling anyone how to feel is futile. This, to me, it feels like a march through the ability to kind of underlie everything. See, the other thing is the idea that you can just click your fingers and monetize something. A lot of people are bad at what they do, and that is not a criticism. You should have the facility, you should have the space in which to potter the fuck around.
Pottering.
I mean, do you honestly think I could put the ducting and the industrial control systems into a building because I literally watched a lot of stuff on how HVAC repair works? No, because I fucking couldn't. Yes? I'm not trying to monetize my interest in that. It's so I know things about the world that we live in. It's why I pump shit in. I don't know if that qualifies as a hobby, but I suppose I've got other hobbies as well. Do I try and monetize them? No. I still writing when I can be bothered when I get around to it, and that's not really a hobby. That's more a compulsion. Look, it comes from a space where it's born of the kind of desperation that people don't have enough money to live in the first place, and the idea that everything needs to fit into a framework where you're exchanging money for goods and services, even when you're supposed to be having what is literally defined as your time off from work. It's kind of the I mean, it feels like a lot of people will tell you a lot of stuff about the predations of capitalism, but like the worst excesses of this to me feel dangerous. They feel like you're going to hollow out everything that you enjoy simply because it's fucking fun. When you get the idea of people who go, I'm going to go to a place and go for a walk, and I'm going to take photos of myself going for a walk and put them on the internet so I can sell the pants that I'm wearing. It's like, are you that small? Are you that much of an empty little wizard? Is that what that means to you? Is like you're continually selling, that you're a continual product? Just fucking. I mean, I understand it a lot more when you've been priced out of a degree, you don't have any fucking options, and you want to get side shit going. I mean, people have done that for a fucking million years. I think it's like things in Pompeii, like people doing side hustles on the side of the street, and the guy's bread cart, or he's buying it over there for one fucking denarius or whatever and selling it over there for $3 and shit like that because it's closer to whatever. Street culture, city culture, urban life has always been built around trying to find extra services. I mean, it starts off with like kids walking around the neighborhood, setting up a table outside the house. I did that as a kid, but it was more about playing store than making money.
Sure.
You know? Why did you bring this up in the context of academic knowledge? You knew this was going to push a fucking button for me. No, but now we're here.
No, but this is good because a lot of people are on salaries, PhD salaries that are very low. And opportunities. Yeah,
and I fully understand when you're in that position the idea that you want more money to support yourself, and not just, oh, thank Christ, I can finally afford rent and ramen, but more kind of, we live in an entire world full of globalized products, and some of them occasionally I find amusing. Yeah, I want a fucking dinosaur onesie. It's like just the money to be able to afford whimsy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely get that. But the whole idea that this is a necessary and laudable thing that should underlie every single other thing that you do, I think it's a fucking disgusting idea. And people who look at that see the entire world through a transactive framework and absolutely nothing else. And that I question their ability to experience other emotions the same way that people who aren't fucked experience them.
I read a great book on this recently called How to Do Nothing. It was excellent.
How to do nothing by yourself with no one? Is that the one?
No.
There's a classic children's book, Dan, that is just about wasting time and being a child. How to do nothing with no one alone by yourself, or something like that.
Here it is. How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell, Resisting the Attention Economy. It was in my bookshelf right next to me. This was a really, really interesting book. Highly recommend.
Okay.
Yeah. Essentially,
how to do nothing with nobody, all alone by yourself.
A kid's book.
That is the kids' version of what you just said. It's very, very old.
Okay.
It was published in the 50s, but it's all about the amusing diversions of life and being a kid. Teach you how to make a paper airplane, how to make a slingshot, and all
the fun stuff that's illegal now.
Make a little court. That's not fucking illegal. Don't be ridiculous.
Slingshot.
What? Okay, I know you live in a nanny state, but there's only so much nan. I don't think they're illegal. They're very, very rarely is that fully. Also, come on, Dan, it's for 6-year-olds and shit.
Yeah, it's all good fun.
Don't be such a fucking joyless prick. You got the entire rest of like talking about academic process to be a joyless prick, and don't take it away from 6-year-olds.
If you're liking what you're hearing, there are a few ways that you can support the work that we do when everything hurts. First, you can throw some of your spare change to us each month, $5 to be exact, and you'll get access to a bonus episode every single month. There's also a $1 tier that will get you access to the Everything Hurts newsletter and the occasional bonus episode. Second, we've got a merch store where we sell hoodies, shirts, and coffee mugs, which is our most popular thing that we sell, so you can tell everyone that you listen to the best science podcast in the world. Third, you can tell your friends about the show by sharing links to episodes on social media. James and I love seeing these posts. For links to our Patreon page and merch store, check out the show notes.
Books is actually another thing where I get a lot of ideas from, and I get distracted very easily when it comes to reading papers online. Even when I tell myself I'm going to shut off the internet and read papers, it's very easy to fall down the reference rabbit hole where you see a reference and you're like, gee, that's interesting. And you know how it is, and you just keep going and going and going, which is why I really...
That I agree with entirely.
Yeah. And it's just, it's crazy. Before you know it, you're reading about mammary function in echidnas. It's just, you're full.
I always end up in classical physiology in some particular piece of it that I've never read.
Yeah.
There's some shit circa like 1920 through 1970. Reading some paper which like we're the first person to do this particular thing in the analog version. And I don't know why I have this weird archaic feeling that somehow them doing it with a glass cylinder and a glass cylinder and a measurement thing on a piece of paper is somehow much cooler than me doing it.
No, but it's cool because these were the first people to actually do this kind of stuff. I've been reading about
I know.
It's so cool. I've been reading about the history of oxytocin research and the sort of stuff in the 20s and 30s. The sort of stuff in the 20s and 30s, it was a home run after home run, and it almost feels like all the it's basically all the low hanging fruit was discovered very early. But seeing all the stuff they were doing with like very sort of archaic equipment it's fascinating. It's actually fascinating.
Yeah, it is. We do not live in an age where it is easy to divorce yourself from the tools that you use to interrogate the world. This is why I was always so... I don't have a lot of like soft spots when it comes to research, but this is why I have a gigantic soft spot for Robert Provine and the kind of, what do you call it, sidewalk neuroscience, street cognitive psychology. I'm not sure. There's some nomenclature that just means we're going to study people. Let's look at people. And here's some facets of basic human interaction that you probably never noticed. And there was something simultaneously like interesting. Like many of the ideas felt like they had a real core, but there's something very 19th century about it. And the fact that it was still possible to do that it made me feel like such a Luddite that I found it so attractive. But I think it's just because it's nice to feel excited about the things that are around you. The idea that you can look at a group of people across the road and they're interacting in a way, and it's forming a process that can be interrogated and understood.
But
so the way that three people laugh together, I mean, there's something I find endlessly charming about shit like that.
But do you think that's what's behind the rush for people to adopt new methods? Obviously in the exploration age, people were just discovering, or at least for their cultures, finding other places for the first time. So when new methods come out, people are like, I can find new stuff based on this shiny new method. And we kind of laugh at people going, everyone's doing this method now. Everyone's doing computational psychiatry now. But it just feels like this kind of gold rush after gold rush. People rush in, get all the early discoveries, and then onto the next thing. That's what it seems like, at least.
Well, obviously, there's an element of ambulance chasing that comes with any given research agenda. Like when you pull money out of a system, when you pull resources out of a system, intelligent elements within that system will react in different ways. It's not driven by curiosity anymore. It's not driven by ideas that you've had that are deeply held convictions over years. It's driven by availability. So a lot of the time is you try and shoehorn things that you already think, questions that you already have as sort of availabilities onto the opportunities that are available to you. But that's not an exercise in hypothesis generation, really. You're talking about something that's more local than that. Well, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people do it exactly the same way that we've been talking about. But there is a certain class of popular book writing motherfucker who looks at basically everything like this as an immediate marketing opportunity. What two ideas do I wish to exist in association that I can exist myself in association to? And it's to further it's not really a scientific scheme as much as it is a marketing program for the fidelity of an idea. And hypotheses in that sense are, they're more facilitators of a branding exercise than they are a sensible way to pose the question. And the reason that those people thrive in general is because they're very good at writing. They're very good at putting these ideas in order. They're very good at crafting a narrative around these kind of brand bricks that they've built that allow them to make progress over time. So that's why, I mean, that sounds extremely cynical of me, except I assure you that is accurate. And I've occasionally met and talk to people who think about things in that way. Well, if we have these sort of associative ideas, it's going to sound cool like this. And if it sounds cool like this, and we have access to all this other stuff, and it fits with my second book and shit like that. They're not interested in the world. They're interested in people's reactions to their observations as marketing objects. Now, there's a point in your life where you sort of shrug your shoulders and go, okay, well, these slippery, mendacious little fucks are always going to exist. So what are you going to do about it? So I don't think it's something I get upset about anymore. As much as it's very tiresome. It just makes you feel old when you see it for the 4,000th time. That, and I think the publishing market in many respects has fragmented significantly now. So the big sort of book leading to Speak a Deal is it's a little bit more of a constellation than it is a series of well-defined bins at this point. So I think that there's less scientists attempting to pursue that now. It's not
really?
to say
you think so?
No, I think it's less of a. I think the market is a little bit too open for people to see like the top grifters and go, "That's a good grift. I want a grift that's just like that," because there's your access to the market to be able to do this in the first place is being like you're being perpetually undercut by other people's abilities to access the same opportunities as you. I don't know if I've explained that very well.
No,
you say some words.
I think that happens a lot in science, but it doesn't happen where people see two ideas and they're going, this can be a cool thing if we do it. What does happen, though, is somebody does a thing and they find some random association or some random effect and go, cool, here is a finding, then that thing becomes their thing and they keep going.
So what you say is, basically, we have something that is extremely prospective that doesn't really have a hypothesis. We mash those together in an experimental observation and we look at the outcomes. So basically the whole thing you're saying is post hoc reasoning forms a different kind of categorical addressal of this environment, and that a lot of shit is driven by that. So, basically like, well, let's let the observations take care of themselves, and like the Iraq War, we'll craft the facts around the narrative.
Yeah, essentially. And then their future work will be around finding ways to continue that narrative, and then other research teams go, this is a cool narrative, I'm going to try that for myself. So I think
we're talking about the same thing, but I think you're starting with the seed.
Yeah, exactly.
The seed of what is eventually a marketing program. I'm talking about the process once it's already been begun. Because I accept everything that you just said as, that's reasonably inarguable now. Because you can see it sometimes within someone's work, and we're like, oh, we mashed all this shit together. We seem to have found this thing, and it works within this kind of context. And they're like, okay, I found the narrative that I will now deploy in the future work to look at X, Y, Z, something. Okay, well, maybe that means that we're both cynical pieces of shit, Daniel, and it's probably your fault, seeing as this was your idea. So, the world judges you.
Nowadays I'm less against this idea of, I used to think having papers with like 4 experiments was a bit silly, a bit daft. But now I'm coming more around to this idea because it is one possible way of guarding against this post-hockery. You do it once, post-hockery, bam. But if you can do that again, then that is one potential defense against that. So I used to think it was a bit weird. You see it a lot in more sort of neuroscience-y papers where there's essentially 6 different experiments to say slightly different things, but they corroborate the larger story. And I think there should be more room for that when practical within psychology, at least.
I would like to see internal pre-registered elements within papers like that.
What do you mean by internal?
Once you've done something and it makes sense and you want to do a second observation, I feel like a very stringent level of oversight happening over pre-registered hypotheses within something like that that's in a narrative, because it is perfectly possible to do 20 things and then p-hack the fuck out of 6 of them and turn them into a very compelling narrative because you took 6 observations. All you're doing then is basically taken to the next level. You're going from playing checkers to playing chess with how you do this narrative association horse shit.
That is.
However, what you're describing, obviously, there is a long tradition in a variety of areas of the social life, biological, etc. sciences, of having stacked observations where you start with a phenomena that you might have noticed by a circumstance. And then you take a larger observation, and then you look for a limit condition in one thing, and then you check whether or not some other thing is relevant, and you discard that. There is, of course, within the social sciences, a long history of those papers where, we did 9 experiments in a row, and it's very hard to say if they occurred in that order, or if they were originally designed to make that sort of observation. It feels like a confidence trick if you do that badly, but if you do it well, I think there's a tremendous opportunity for other people to extend faith in your ideas. And as per usual, it comes down to research methodology, like so many other things.
I've read some journals allow a 2-step registered report where you have your initial experiment or your initial approach, and you essentially have 2 paths, kind of like choose your own adventure. If you get outcome A, then this is your pre-registration. If you have outcome B, then this is your pre-registration. So it essentially recognizes that a lot of research is sequential and you can't get to the final thing until you get to step A or step B or what have you. I like that.
Okay. Yeah. Look, I think there is a tremendous future in being able to do things like that. Especially, look, if you've got a multi-stage thing, if you've got like 2 initial experiments and then the ability to pre-register certain elements, and then you're allowed to go experimental after that. I mean, you're describing a very managed process compared to write some shit down and have other people read it. But if you have important enough observations, see, that's the thing. If you have a great deal of faith in what you're trying to observe, if you really know, if you know why, if you have a tremendous amount of control of your variables, if you have faith in your experimental apparatus, and you understand the mechanics of the environment that you're taking these observations in, the idea that this stuff is particularly onerous really is flipped on its head and presented in terms of, if we do this exactly right, we're going to have the best fucking evidence. And it's going to be very well appreciated by the community of people who really know how this shit is put together. If you're a lot of it, this is all these new ideas. It's all so much work. It's work to help you provide strong empirical centers to the observations of shit that you say. That is important. And you see people, it's like, we're absolutely certain, we know this, we're going to pre-register the fuck out of it, and we're going to do exactly the way we said before, and then it's going to work. Yeah? That confidence is built of, well, either self-delusion or a great deal of evidence-driven confidence. And, if it doesn't work, you can always just fill it after the fact anyway, like a dodgy piece of shit.
And I've seen people now. Don't do
that. Don't do that, kids.
Do not do that.
Don't do that.
I've seen people now that are advocating.
Everything hurts does not support your research misconduct.
No, do not do that. I've seen people advocating that we need to have more stricter hypotheses within psychology, and in that sense, it's like,
oh Christ, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're so confident about your finding, then you should be able to predict the effect size. Yeah. Don't just say there's going to be an effect. Go, we predict this is going to be between 0.2 or 0.3, and having more stringent, because if that hypothesis is supported, and in order to get that,
if you have woolly associative ideas that are basically just,
it's boxes and arrows, mate. Boxes and arrows.
Yeah, it's just, you're just sort of smashing metaphors together idly in a sandpit. If you're doing that, because we obviously we want that, but people have been complaining about the woolliness of the ability to access concepts through making basic experimental tasks given to partially attentive 19-year-olds for a fucking million years. Of what should these hypotheses be built? Or here's a better one. You tell me about your work, now come up with 2. You tell me a couple of those. We're going to run the risk. I don't know if we're doing this already. We're going to run the risk collectively of trying to reform ourselves to fucking death. Like, the thing that there's all these ideas about what needs to happen next. And obviously I'm extremely reform positive and have complained about pretty much every single aspect of everything to do with the pursuit of academic science. I have no intention of stopping doing that. However, you've got to get to a point where what you want is answered by things like, well, we're going to need a different publication system. We're going to need more money. We're going to need a different way of how resources are dispersed throughout the entire academic commons. That's where you're going to end up, and you're going to have to do shit about that. You can't go back and go, okay, well, the statistics are weak, the methods are weak, the hypotheses are weak, and we've got a whole process of like, what can we do better? I do not want to think that this is going to continue and there's going to be more fucking arguments about what happens within the process with not sufficient attention paid to the environment in which the process happens.
That's because it's hard to address, though.
Of course it's fucking harder to address. If you want something easy, there's a fucking million ways to have an easy life, Dan. It came up in this debate recently. I did a debate on the 450 movement.
Is that public somewhere?
Probably eventually. But the intellectual center of a lot of pushback against the idea that we should pay reviewers, not that we should pay them the amount of money that I want, the fact that they should be paid in the first place, which was a nasty little rhetorical trick that I think undid us. We lost, by the way, quite substantially. I didn't want to argue about $450. I wanted to argue about the idea of pricing labor and downwards pressure on the fact that there's a million billion peer reviews and increasingly few people to do the fucking things in the first place. The quality's going down. They're almost impossible to get for some editors. And the one of the reasons the system is overheated is because so many of them are handed out to people who have what are bad white-collar jobs. So basically, like the intellectual center of the argument against this was it's hard. It's hard. It would be hard to put together the payment structure. Well, I mean, the response that you want to say that you can't in a debate because you know it's an ineffective rhetorical strategy is, well, yeah, handing out 5 million payments globally, regardless of visa conditions and people's ability to accept work and how the payment transfer is going to occur. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's easier than you think because I don't think I was dealing with people who understood SaaS businesses very well right now. And global payments have come a long way in the last 5 to 10 years. It's really, really good now. There's so many good services to this. But there's other places if you want an easy life. What did you think being a scientist was going to be? Simple? Yeah, of course it's fucking hard. Everything's hard. I mean, there's a lot of shit that was easy. Some ideas are easy and the implementation is hard. Yeah, it's easy enough to prove at some point in time that putting lead in things that aren't fully developed gives them neurological damage and turns them into violent assholes. Yeah, that's easy enough to prove with enough sinkers from the hardware store and enough water bottles and enough poor little rats. That's easy enough to prove. Yeah? And then you've got the entire globe where it's covered in fucking heavy metals where you have to do mitigation on all the soil or all the built environments or something else. Yeah, there's always going to be a fucking implementation gap on anything. And honestly, look, it's hard. Yeah, man. Monetize your hobby and get paid to be a fucking gardener. I don't know. And someone's probably going to tell me, well, shut up, James. That's hard too. You got to stick that trowel in awful deep. Yeah, and you know what? They're probably right.
But before
look, we don't have the reason that we have complicated problems now is because they have risen along a constant continuum with what's possible. Everything exists with regards to the interface we have to interfere with it in the first place. Yeah? And here's something else. Like classical biologists from the 50s or something like that, you give one of those motherfuckers a GCMS machine that works digitally, a 96 weld plate automatic patch clamper, the ability to fucking crisp this stuff. You really think those people can come back from the dead and kick your ass at finding out shit about the world? They just might. They just might, motherfucker.
Before we finish up,
I don't even know what I'm upset about now.
I want to.
This has been a very unfocused episode, and I think it's your fault.
No, this is very timely that you said that because I want to circle back to one thing that you said right at the start, which was this disconnect between industry and academia, where in industry you have this singular focus within your organization, yet with Yet with academia, we don't have this, despite the fact that having a singular focus would obviously get more stuff done. Why is there this massive disconnect between the two?
Because generally you scale a company through being able to, at the beginning, do one thing particularly well. And the advice that you always get and the experience that you always have is people trying to deviate you from the plan that you have the best available evidence will work. And because an academic department is made up of a constellation of different people with different needs who want to do different shit in different ways. Yeah?
I'm talking more at an individual or like a lab level, where if you're within a lab level, then there at least should be some sort of some sort of way or some sort of focus?
A collective focus?
Yeah.
Well, I think in good lab standards there are. But also a lot of people who've risen to a certain level of academic managerialism are shit with people and shit with managing organizations. Some of them are shit people too. Dan, focus is hard everywhere. Everyone offers you glittering opportunities to kill yourself. It happens. It happens all the time everywhere. You get involved in something, you don't think it'll take very long. It takes longer than you expect. You have other responsibilities, etc., etc. It's an inevitable consequence of managerialism. It's very easy for 6 people to communicate well. It starts to break down at sort of like 30 to 60, where you end up with the people who are entirely at cross purposes.
Yeah.
And in the end, a lot of the work that you do consists entirely of doing work to make sure that the other work is sufficiently communicated. Like a lot of work in a larger organization is meta work. And, if academic administrators had their say, pretty much all that would happen.
That's it. That's all you do.
but you can't have no sympathy for them. They have local procedures they need to follow within the university. They have governmental and other things, the strictures that need to be paid attention to. Some people's whole careers are flights from managerialism. That's how much they hate it. There's plenty of people who've only ever worked within small organizations because they got one office job one time to do something complicated for a lot of money, and they fucking hated it so much they left and joined a startup with 6 people in it. There's plenty of people like that who just like the idea of doing this kind of perpetual glacial, the march of progress, and progress has got osteoarthritis in both fucking knees. Yeah, that drives some people to distraction so much they refuse to work for classes of organization defined by their ability to provide annoyance.
I get that.
You have to be very good at what you do to be able to get away with that. It's not. I mean, that's definitely. I mean, people love talking about privilege. That's a fucking privilege.
Yeah, definitely.
To be able to just go, I don't want anything to do with that class of organization. Like, I could never make a decision like that and then stick to it. That's a skills in demand, fuck you money kind of position.
Yeah.
So some lucky bastard out there, whoever she is, I envy your life, hypothetical woman I just made up in my head.
We're going to wrap up for this episode. Thanks for listening. Our last episode on Clubhouse was one of our most downloaded for quite a while, James.
Why? Recording that was extremely complicated and annoying.
It was complicated.
Was it particularly good or something?
I think we got some feedback. People liked the audience interaction. We had three
I love the audience interaction. I question our ability to record it.
Yeah. I think we will be better at doing that next time. Now that we know, we had to try it the first time. Of course, we happened to try and record the first.
Look, if there was a proper way to organize this shit, if there was just one platform that we could all agree on, as every platform tries to do exactly the same thing as every other platform all the time. And having used Clubhouse a little bit more, I'd like to listen in on other people's a little bit more than I like speaking in them sometimes. I get plenty of speaking done in the rest of my fucking life. I have to say that the app is very bad. It is a bad application. It is poorly designed. It is difficult to navigate. It has many intensely annoying features, and has the remarkable kind of. I mean, I presume they're working on an Android version, but why the fuck did you release something popular that's Apple only?
Yeah.
Like, how was that ever part of your release plan? I do people all the time. I get friends like, "Hey, it's just the thing. We should hang out and talk on the thing." And I saw this funny club, and we could have a chat, and there's cool people talking about cool shit, and I can't do it because I've got a Pixel 3. Although a Russian guy told me the other day that there is actually a Russian language version where they've already hacked it and ported it out to something else. Trust the Russian, man.
Trust the Russians. But look, Twitter's...
I love that shit. I love that fucking mindset. That idea that there's some guy called Yevgeny in a room who's already cracked that motherfucker open and make it. That's the best. God bless you, Yevgeny. I appreciate your mindset.
But Twitter's doing a clone called Spaces.
Yes, I can't figure out how to get into it, how to access it. I clicked on it by accident the other day, and someone started telling me about their fundraise while I was sitting on the toilet. The phone just started talking to me.
Oh, well, apparently
I'm glad I didn't get to talk, because I think I made a squeaky noise and started stabbing at the phone. Why are they? What happened?
I think they're randomly inviting people to. So anyone can join one, but only certain people can actually start one. And I think it's interesting in the fact that, one, people who use Android phones can use it. So at least it's open to a ton more people. And two, I think it's going to be a better way to actually reach people, because you already have these networks established on Twitter. Whereas on Clubhouse, you're almost creating these new networks as well. And you're using Twitter to actually organize, hey, come join my club. Hey, come join this chat. But if you're already on Twitter, it's going to be a ton easier to actually do stuff. So hopefully,
yeah, anything for a quiet life, man. It would be nice to be able to do that. I love you. I've said this a fucking 100 times on this podcast. My favorite thing is listener emails. I love it when we have recorded questions, and talking to people is also, I mean, not only a lot of the time is it better content. I'm sure we repeat ourselves from time to time. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't want to know exactly how I feel about something, even though for some reason they're unaccountably listening to me say it. But it's always new. It's always giving you something to react to. You can fucking help someone. I like that. That's the thing that I like, especially when someone goes, I've got a problem. How do I navigate this situation? Fuck yeah. If I can help you, I will.
Yeah. So
I like that.
Fingers crossed, spaces will come up, but we also have the option of doing more live stuff where we can actually it's tricky to get live video or live audio outside of Clubhouse, but we can do stuff on Twitch. We can do stuff on YouTube where people can actually listen live and comment. That is very, very doable from our end. And look, I want to try that, man.
I do too, but you've got to pick a horse. It's like every time 3 wankers in a garage give something a cool name, I know you want to try it straight away. But, I mean, we're going to have to – you can't ride 2 horses with one arm, as the Hungarians say.
We can actually do simultaneously. We can do Twitch and YouTube and do that. But I think it'd be good.
Okay. Well, let's do that then. It'll make everyone very happy.
Let's do that. Thank you for listening, everyone. Please use the audio question option that we have on our website. If you go to our website, up the top, you will see a tab which is audio question, and you can send in your audio question and we'll play it on the show and we'll answer it. So please take that. And of course, we have our email address, and we have we have Twitter as well, which is where
you undersold that. You can record an audio question straight through the website just by pushing the button that's on the page. And then it hoovers it up and sends it to Dan, and then your dulcet tones are available for our mockery and blasphemy. I mean, our sincere ability to try and help you.
Yeah, do it. Take the opportunity. We've had a few in the past, but it's there. Super easy to do, and you will hear your question played on the next Everything Hurts episode. Thank you again for listening. We love all the feedback that we get over all the mediums, and we'll be back again in April with our next episode. This is one of those funny months with 5 Mondays, so we're going to be back again in April with our next episode.
Well. Take care of yourselves out there. It may not sound like it, but we love you.
You're about to listen to one of our bonus episodes from the archive, which is available to all of our Professor Fancy Pants patrons. In this one, which was originally released in February 2020, we talk about a reviewer who was angry that an author mentioned pre-registration in a paper abstract. The horror, which then turned into a chat about pre-registration in general and how a bad registration might be worse than no registration at all. Hope you enjoy it. Welcome to Everything Hurts bonus episode for February 2020. James, I just want to jump straight into it, and I'm going to read out a tweet that I saw a few hours ago.
Oh, shitting heck. Here we go.
This
Yeah,
was,
he said he was going to do this, and now he's doing it. So
now I'm doing it.
where does that leave me in my feelings? All right.
That's for the second half of the bonus
All
episode.
right, Captain Funny Pants. What's on your special little mind?
This was a tweet from Julian Quant, and Julian has said...
Is that a play on quantitative, or is that the gentleman's name?
I believe that's a gentleman's surname, by the looks of it. Quant,
Wow.
the way that it's spelled, Quandt.
Oh, right. I thought there was some serious nominative determinism shit going on.
Maybe it is. But okay, so Julian has said, I just received this as part of a review on a paper that I was a co-author on. And I'm going to read a screenshot of this. And this is from the reviewer. And the reviewer writes, as a footnote, I must add that at various points in the paper, including twice, inappropriately in the abstract, the authors refer to the fact that the research was pre-registered. This is done as though to convey that this confers extra credibility on the design. It does not and never does. Instead, the present incomplete factorial design illustrates the real true truth about pre-registration. The only thing that it achieves for certain is to pile another layer of bureaucracy and paperwork on researchers and students who are already struggling to get some research done in the face of the demands of IRBs, conflicts of interest forms, and on and on and on and on and on the review goes.
Okay, so pre-registration confers no value whatsoever. It's being used as a social signal to essentially boost the perceived inherent accuracy of work.
That was the accusation of the reviewer, yes.
But it does nothing whatsoever.
Except for add layers of bureaucracy and to make students work.
Okay, so presumably this person gets as annoyed as all the other layers of bureaucracy? I mean, they said something there about IRBs. Often we have ethical approval required to have someone sit in a room and look at coloured squares, shit like that.
Yeah, but I don't understand how pre-registration adds more layers of IRB. Your research needs to get past IRB.
What they're saying, look, this is... It doesn't add anything at all. I mean, there's a small component. If you know how something needs to be structured, I mean, presumably you know how something needs to be done before you do it, unless you have some kind of severe kind of...
You're a psycho.
Yeah, well... Presumably what they're trying to say... Let's be charitable for a minute and then let's allow ourselves the luxury of getting upset. Presumably what they're trying to say is, no amount of pre-registration will save you from a poorly specified model, a bad design, a series of decisions that invalidate the eventual outcomes. Presumably that's what they mean. And what they're taking exception to is the idea that in the absence of doing that, you would spend your time presumably not reading the work of the reviewer or their textbook or their whatever else, right? And the problem is that there's a split between how one, it's basically saying, I'm telling you how to use your time. Well, now I'm curious, basically. Has this ever happened to... I mean, I know this opinion exists. I've seen it before in some format. It seems to be some combination of a misunderstanding, a straw man, some uncharitable readings, and also the inherent recognition of the fact that anything that's brought in as a professional procedure is capable of being bastardized, misused, abused, and generally turned on its head when there isn't any kind of interest or oversight in that not happening. It's very easy to do bullshit pre-registration. It may even be easier to make something bad look good with the simple prediction. Hey, I said I was going to do the bad thing, and then it turned out exactly how the fuck I wanted. So, has this ever happened to you?
What, an accusation telling me that I shouldn't be mentioning pre-registration or that I'm doing something for the wrong reasons?
Well, basically, anything like this. Have you been accused of boosting? Has someone said that's completely pointless? Why would you say that? I mean, this looks like mentioning it in the first place has incurred a loss of trust for this guy.
I think maybe once or twice I've had the indirect accusation of you are only talking about this because it's the cool thing. That's what everyone's talking about now. Nothing direct. But one thing I do want to come back to
But that's not an argument.
What do you mean?
Look, you're only talking about it because it's the cool thing. Everything that people take up in the first place starts off as the cool thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Where do they think ideas come from? Like, is everyone born 55 doing a process that was set in stone by Moses? God, fuck yourself.
It's mental.
Right?
But
I mean, yes, you can say it has undue attention, but the other go, oh, you're just bandwagon jumping, is not a statement on the quality of the fucking bandwagon.
But look, I do want to say that I do actually agree with that. You saying pre-registration done poorly is not going to improve research design. People either nefariously or without even thinking can do a poor pre-registration, make it very broad, going, our treatment is going to improve depression, and do it just like that. People can do that. People can say that. You can do that on clinicaltrials.gov or on OSF, and you can post a timestamp pre-registration, and you could actually say, either in good faith or in bad faith, we pre-registered this. I would argue that paper is actually worse than if they didn't do that at all, because now it's been given a veneer of respectability, because they've said in the paper a veneer.
Yes.
Yeah, a veneer of respectability, because they've said this is pre-registered. Now, the problem is when people don't actually follow up on the pre-registration, and under most circumstances, there is, unless you have a very motivated editor or reviewer, they're not actually going to match the pre-registration with what's actually written in the paper. And
that's already the problem with clinical trials. That's why we had the whole episode with Henry.
Yeah, exactly. So done poorly, then I can see that it's not going to magically improve research design. But to say that it has no value whatsoever,
That requiring a method section is something that, like, everything can be misused. I like to think of a lot of these structural changes that are possible as something that gives you the opportunity to display legitimacy when it's present. If you have done everything right and you have been careful, and presumably you have even had a good idea of what to investigate about the world, you have the facility now to ask for, under circumstances that we've all sort of agreed on, you have the ability to ask for extra trust and credibility. Now, ask for is the important part of the previous sentence. Conferring it because you did it is bullshit. It's the ability to ask for increased trust. So I would sincerely hope that when these things are reviewed, because people are saying, trust me, I've got this thing, that is reviewed in terms of being understood as a crucial element of the document. Yeah? It's like if, say, the police are making a case against a money launderer or something like that, and they've got all the financial documents, and it looks pretty good, and maybe there's an explanation, something. And then they say, oh, we've also got phone calls of him talking to his banker in the Cayman Islands and saying dodgy shit like, buy Billie Eilish and turn her into manure. You know? Spend all that money on a yacht. I know it belongs to Mrs. Phillips. That's not important right now. But you'd never prosecute that case and say, we also have audio recordings, and then not have to show whatever the fuck they were. When it turns up to like any legal procedure like that, one of the strongest things you have in the legal domain, one of the strongest principles, is the fact that people get to see shit before the trial. You don't get to go surprise.
Surprise. Yeah.
You have to provide the information that you're going to use to other people. You can't keep it in escrow, in secret, and then spring it on them. It's the idea, and of course, because when things go to trial, which is incredibly uncommon for a normal court case, the vast majority of things don't. When it does, the idea that everything can be picked through and that is tested becomes really important. So, look, maybe in general, maybe there's an overreaction to some of this now. Maybe one of the things that will happen in a while is that people who know that they're trustworthy, who have the right kind of reputation, don't fucking bother pre-registering something the first time, and then they do it. Just the regular way of exploring something, and when they want to really commit, maybe they go the whole way and go straight to, here's a registered report with as much control as humanly possible. We're really interested in pre-specifying what this effect's actually like. Because the idea of a disconnected registration of what you're going to do, that no one's going to check, right? I don't think anyone's expecting that not to be like clinicaltrials.gov. Because that literally is that now. And in general, a funded RCT has more writing on it than your bullshit study about how 48 undergraduates feel about the toenail fungus. More money, more people, definitely more external relevance when it comes to the immediate health of other people. Right? The evidence is, it have different intellectual traditions, but one has more immediate ability to directly affect the lives of other people in ways that could either make them not dead or make them dead or something in between that is of similar seriousness.
Much more writing on it.
So if we're incapable of checking whether or not all the fucking RCTs are appropriately organized, the idea that everyone's going to go into your fucking nested factorial design and try and figure out whether or not everything ran in the first place, especially when everyone can't get reviewers in the first instance right now to review the fucking papers that they've got. There's not going to be some sudden increase in diligence where everyone's going to do this matching up for you. Look, if you're capable of doing it, I mean, presumably this is the other thing as well, is that there should be hallmarks in a paper like this. This fellow, what was his name? Bunt? Clark Kent?
Clark Kent.
Julian Quant. Julian Quant.
I quite like that name, Quant. Presumably, if he's complaining about this on the internet, then he's someone who knows probably you, as you've seen it. And he's within a community of people who've done this because he takes it seriously. Now, you might think, well, the reviewer didn't know that, and they might think he was a mendacious little shit. However, I have seen things that were pre-registered shittily, and I've seen things that were pre-registered properly. There obviously are heuristic hallmarks within the paper of how seriously you're taking the evidence that you put in front of other people. Yeah? And I'm going to make the presumption that someone from a research tradition that you'd come across in the first place probably is displaying most or all of those. It's not some desperate venal plea to be taken more seriously because it provides some kind of additive advantage. It's a way of credibly establishing credibility.
I would argue the researcher who has been forced to pre-register kicking and screaming is going to have the worst pre-registration than someone who's within the tradition.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, almost certainly.
People who are like, oh, my institution has made me do this. My funder has made me do this, rather than the person. Like,
they're going to do it 4 hours before it was due,
or do it
that step like that old cartoon. Like then a miracle happens, and you know
that was like the paper that Stu Murray did, or that I actually co-authored, which is looking at anorexia nervosa, and so many registrations were actually done post hoc. Which was either
clinical trial registrations.
Yeah, like this is anorexia.
Eating
that's serious.
Research,
that's serious stuff.
Eating disorder research is, as far as I can tell, bad. I don't want to cast aspersions on why, because we don't really have the time. That's the impression that I get.
Cleaning house with a number of people, which is good. A lot of people are actually starting to care about this. But there was a ton of trials.
They fucking should. It's important.
It's very important. But I was very surprised. I think we found 20%, a crazy high amount of trials, which were pre-registered or were registered after the fact, which is essentially useless. How do these platforms even allow the facility to do this? I don't understand. Under what circumstances is it useful to have this is what we would have done if we pre-registered it? And what I want to see is, are there any post hoc pre-registrations which actually disagree with the results?
Now, Dan, there's being a regular kind of moron, and then there's being like a
uber moron,
ultra moron. Yeah, if anyone's got one of those, we should get. Yeah, this is a special patrons only challenge.
Yeah.
If you can find someone who's retrospectively posted a pre-registration and then it disagrees with their results, we will send you a prize.
We'll send you a prize.
But good luck with that, because, I mean, if that's the case, I don't think people are going to work because they're too stupid to tie their shoes in the morning. So I don't think they made it to the lab to be able to write the paper, to be quite honest.
I don't think that would exist. And there's two. Yeah.
Let's knock it off, man.
Yeah.
Everything's killing me here. Wait. Nope, that's the name.
That is the name.
Go on with you. Do your little sign out.
Thanks.
Do a little dance.
Thank you for listening.
Make a little love.
Thank you, patrons. Remember that you get a discount on the old merch. We're loving seeing people who've been posting in photos. James, we had a T-shirt given as a Valentine's Day gift. Isn't that amazing?
Oh man, that warms my heart.
That does warm my heart. And yeah, we're seeing people posting pictures, which is great. So thanks for supporting the show, and thanks for being our patrons. We'll be back again in a month's time with more bonus hertz. See you then.
Yay! Be good.